Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. I live in the city of Memphis, state of Tennessee, in the county ship. And today is early Monday morning, January the 19th, 2015. And the time is 3:20 a.m. on the date today's video. Yesterday's date will be Sunday, January the 18th, 2015. And being that this is January 19th, 2015, this is the day that's been set aside as a federal holiday to celebrate the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You know, so I hope everybody be able to promote service and recognize the King holiday for serving your community. And I want to first say thank you to all my fans, my support for your continued encouragement and support. And as I always keep my fans support informed, and continue to keep myself employed at a company right here in the city of Memphis, state of Tennessee, in the county sheriff, called Amerifry, right there on the corner of Vans Avenue and Walnut Street. And I'm continuing to further my education at a school called Monroe College Online, pursuing my associate degree, studying business administration with a concentration in marketing. And as I keep my fans and my supporters informed about this court case, uh, the legal action that I'm pursuing against One Sound Studio and against this guy named Lou and his little video company called Wicked Film. And I'm continuing to be in contact with my attorney, so uh, things being done legally to make sure they don't tell anybody that they got away with stealing some money from me. So we're gonna go right into African traditional religion and West African traditional religion. We're gonna go to the National Open University of Nigeria online courseware. Excuse me. And like I said, I want to encourage all those who are seeking education. Uh, the National Open University of Nigeria and other universities in Sub-Saharan Africa and in North Africa offer classes and courses and things of that nature. So if you're looking for education, consider the National Open University of Nigeria and other universities, other institutions of higher learning in Sub-Saharan Africa and possibly in North Africa. Adjust my seat. Now, National Open University of Nigeria's online courseware material. You can go to their website. That's what I'm at. And you can study religion and society. CTA 001. Introduction to the study of religion. CTA 003. Introduction to philosophy. CTA 009. Philosophy of religion. CTA 043. Then you can study Introduction to Linguistics 1, LIN 111, Introduction to Linguistics 2, LIN 112, Introduction to Sociology, CSS 111. Then you got a class called Types of Theology, CTA 122, Introduction, scroll up a little bit. Introduction to Philosophy, CTA 131. Introduction to African Traditional Religion, CTA 192. Introduction to the Study of Religion, CTA 173. Religion and Society, CTA 151. You study Comparative Study of Religion, CTA 202. Philosophy of Religion, CTA 233. Language and Society, ENG 251. Introduction to Sociology 1, NSS 217. Sociology of Religion, CTA 352. Introduction to Semantics, ENG 331. Introduction to Applied Linguistics, ENG 351. Introduction to Sociolinguistics, ENG 355. Introduction to World Religions, ISL 313. African Traditional Religion and Culture, CTA 491. Multilingualism, ENG 454. Psycholinguistics, ENG 491. Theology of African Traditional Religion, CTA 792. Then you got all those the School of Science and Technology. Scroll all the way down. You got all kinds of schools. It's okay. You got the School of Science and Technology. Then it's another school over here. It's you got School of Education. You got a School of Law. School of Management Sciences. So for all those listening, uh, African traditional religion and West African traditional religion, you can go to the National Open University of Nigeria's online courseware. You can get in contact. I encourage all those listening to get in contact with the National Open University of Nigeria and get yourself enrolled and start studying African traditional religion, West African traditional religion. But there are many other institutions of higher learning in sub-Saharan Africa and also in North Africa. So get in contact with them and they'll give you all the information that you need to get enrolled, including myself, but I'm already a student at Monroe College online and you know, in the very near future. So now we're gonna go to the languages, Afro-Asiatic language, then we're gonna go to the Nilo-Saharan language, then we're gonna go to the Niger-Congo language, and we're gonna also talk about the Austronesian and the Khoi Sans language. The Afro-Asiatic languages, the Berber, the Chadic, the Cushitic, the Egyptian, the Omotic, and the Semitic. So we're gonna start with the Semitic. And the Semitic languages are Arabic, Amharic, Hebrew, Tigrinya, and Aramaic. We're on Wikipedia. We're on Wikipedia. So everybody that's listening, I'm on my desktop. It's Wikipedia. My laptop is Bing. So we're gonna go to Hebrew first. Now the Canaanite is a Hebrew. Canaanite is a Semitic language. And I said Hebrew and Phoenician are two major branches of the subfamily of the Canaanite. Now Phoenician is extinct and Punic is a dialect of the Phoenician is also extinct. Now, okay, that's the case. Phoenician is extinct, Punic is extinct. Then Hebrew is the Ammonite is an extinct Hebrew dialect. The Moabite is an extinct Hebrew dialect. The Edomite is an extinct Hebrew dialect. Biblical Hebrew is an extinct Hebrew. Hebraic dialect, Tiberian Hebrew, Mizrahi Hebrew, Yemenite Hebrew, Ashkenazi Hebrew, Misnaic Hebrew, Medieval Hebrew, Ashkale Hebrew, Modern Hebrew, Israeli Hebrew, Ancient Samaritan Hebrew, and Samaritan Hebrew. Now, Hebrew is a Semitic language, of the Afro-Asiatic language. Arabic. Arabic is a Semitic language, and it belongs to the Afro-Asiatic family. And Arabic has three main variants. It's classical Arabic, modern standard Arabic, and colloquial or dialectical Arabic. Then we have Amharic. It's a Semitic language spoken in Ethiopia, and it is one of the second most spoken Semitic language in the world after Arabic, and it is the working language of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. It says it is written left to right using Amharic Fidel, which grew out of the Ge'ez Abegida. Now you know the Amharic. Now you know the etymology of the word Rastafari. You know the Amharic comes from Amharic, and that Rastafari was the pre-regular title of Haile Selassie I. Ras means the head, the Ethiopian title equivalent to Duke, and Haile Selassie pre-regular name Tafari. Now the Rastafaris they say they learn Amharic as a second language, considered to be a second language. Now this would say after Haile Selassie the one 1966 visit to Jamaica, study circles in Amharic were organized in Jamaica as part of the ongoing exploration of Pan-African identity and culture. Now, we just previously went through the National Open University of Nigeria's online courseware. So for the people in Jamaica that's listening and everywhere, get in contact with the National Open University of Nigeria, and the people in Jamaica learn your history about the slave ships, about slavery, about the Atlantic slave trade, the West African, West Coast of African slave trade, and know your history, because Haile Selassie was an Ethiopian, and the Ethiopians are Afro-Asiatic. The Jamaican people are not Afro-Asiatic, they are West African and Bantu. So when you learn language, instead of speaking English and speaking Amharic, the Jamaican people and all the people in the Caribbean islands, all the people that's in South America, Central America, of African ancestry, of African descendancy, you are Bantu, you are West African, based on the slave trade. You are not an Afro-Asiatic, including myself. Tigrinya. Tigrinya is an Afro-Asiatic language belonging to the family Semitic family. in Tigray speakers primarily inhabit the Tigray region in northern Ethiopia, where speakers are called Tigrawat or Tigray, as well as the contiguous border of southern and central Eritrea. Now it says here, Tigray was one of Eritrea's official languages during their short-lived federation with Ethiopia. It said in 1958 it was replaced with the southern Ethiopian language Amharic prior to its annexation. Upon Eritrea's independence in 1990, Tigrinya retained its status of working language in the country, the only state in the world today to award Tigrinya recognition on a national level. Now that was Tigrinya. Now we're going to Aramaic. Now Aramaic is a family of languages or dialects belonging to the Semitic family, which is Northwest Semitic subfamily, which also includes Canaanite languages such as Hebrew and Phoenician. It said Aramaic is broken down into three broad periods. It's Old Aramaic, Middle Aramaic, and Modern Aramaic. And those were the Semitic language. Now we're going to Omatic. Omatic languages are a branch of the Afro-Asiatic spoken in southwest Ethiopia. So the Gilead script is used to write some Omatic language, the Latin alphabet, some others. The North and South Omatic branches, Nomatic and Soma, are universally recognized. Now that was the Omatic. Now we're going to the Egyptian. So Egyptian is the oldest known language of Egypt and a branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family. Said scholars group the Egyptian language to six major chronological divisions: Archaic Egyptian language, Old Egyptian language, Middle Egyptian language, Late Egyptian language, Demotic Egyptian language, and Coptic Egyptian language. Now that's the Egyptian language. The Cushitic language are a branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family spoken primarily in the Horn of Africa, Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, and Ethiopia, as well as the Nile Valley, Sudan, and Egypt, and parts of the African Great Lakes regions, Tanzania and Kenya. The Cushitic languages are included branches: Baya, North Cushitic, Central Cushitic, Aga, Highland East Cushitic, Sidamic, Lowland East Cushitic, Dudley, and South Cushitic. The Chadic languages are a branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family spoken in the Sahel, and then language spoken across the northern Nigeria, southern Niger, southern Chad, Central African Republic, and northern Cameroon. And then it says here, we got three main branches. We got West Chadic, has two branches: A, the Hase, Run, Boli, and Angus language, and B, Badi, Wajak, and Zar language. Then you have your Biu Madare, Central Chadic, three branches: A, Bure, Kanwi, and Bete, B, the Badume, and Musgu, and C, Gadar. East Chadic, two branches: A, the Tumac, then Siri, and Kire, B, the Danglead, Makulu, and Socorro, and Macy. The verbal languages or dialects, family of similar and closely related language and dialects indigenous to North Africa. Berber constitutes a branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family, and it has 6 varieties: Tashilhit, Kabyle, Atlas Tamizite, Rifi, Shawi, and Tuareg. And all those are those were the Afro-Asiatic language family. Now we're going to the Nilo-Saharan. Now the Nilo-Saharan languages are composed of African languages spoken by some 50-something plus million people with it, in the Chari and Nile rivers, including historic Nubia. And also extends from northern half of Africa, from Algeria to Benin and west, from Libya to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and from Egypt to Tanzania. Said these are the major languages of the Nilo-Saharan. The Luo, the Dulo language of Luo is Kenya's 3rd largest ethnicity after the Niger Congo, Kikuyu, and Luye. Now you have Kanuri. Kanimbu is included. That's around Lake Chad. Then you have your Sanghe, and it's mostly Zame. Then it's spread around the Niger River in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Tiso, then Nubian, that's up there in southern Egypt and northern Sudan. Lubare, the Feringe Low Lubare is included. That's around Uganda and Congo. Then you have your Kalenjin, the dialects Nanda and Poka. Then you have your Lango, that's a Luo language. Then you have your Dinka, that's in South Sudan. Then you have your Chole, that's another Luo language of Uganda. Then you have your Maasai. Then you have your Ngambe around Central Sudan and Southern Chad. Then you have your Nua. Then you have your Fur. Then you have your Tugu. Now they have 2 dialects. Tugu have 2 dialects, the Zage and T-Dage. All those languages were Nilo-Saharan. Now, we're going to do the Khoi San language around Namibia and Botswana. That's in the southwest Africa. And that's the Khoi and the San. There's 2 groups of people, the Khoi people and the San people. Those are click consonant speakers. They speak with the click consonants. And so that's your Khoi and your San. Then you have your Austronesians. The Austronesians around Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and also the island of Madagascar. You know, the Austronesian speakers. You know, now, excuse me. And now we're going to go to Niger, Congo. Now, the Niger-Congo language constitutes one of the world's major language families. Now, we're going to go down, scroll down. Now, the major traditional branch and major language of the Niger-Congo family, they are the Kordofanian language, spoken in southern central Sudan, around the Nube Mountains. Yamandi, spoken in West Africa, includes Bambara, as well as Soniki. Now, the main language spoken in Mali is Mandi, which is Bambara, then as well as Soniki, and language spoken mainly in Mali, but also in Senegal and Mauritania. Then you have your Ajoy in Nigeria, including Ajo and Defake. Then you have your Dogon, spoken in Mali. Then you have your Atlantic, including Wolof, spoken in Senegal, and Fule, spoken across the Sahel. Now your Kru, spoken in West Africa, including Biti and Yahweh and Dade. Senufo, spoken in Ivory Coast and Mali, as well includes Signari and Sukyari. Your Gur languages, which is more spoken in Burkina Faso. Adamawa languages, such as Chambe in Cameroon. Your Bunji languages, such as Sango in the Central African Republic. Then you have your Kwe, includes Akan, that's spoken in Ghana. Then you have your Volta Niger, West Benue Congo. Your GB languages, spoken in Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria, which is Iwi. Then you have your Yoruba and your Igbo, language spoken in Nigeria. Don't forget, that's the Volta Niger. That's the West Benue Congo. Then your East Benue Congo, including the large Bantu family, Swahili, Fang, Congo, Zulu, and many other languages in Central and Southern Africa. Now, scroll down where it says Niger Congo language subgroups and numbers of speakers. The Kordofan branch. Then you have your Mandi branch, Bambara, Maniki, Mindi, Soniki, Dan, Jule, Mandinka, and Capelli. That's the Mandi branch. Then you have your Atlantic branch, which is Full. Then you have your Dogon. Then you have your Ajoy branch. Now you see when you scroll down there, look at how they got a group. You got the Niger Congo language subgroup and number of speakers. You see how they got it. You got Kordofan branch. Then you got your Mandi branch. Then you got your Atlantic branch. Then you see Dogon. Then you see Ajoy branch. Now stop right there. Then you say Volta Congo language. It's a line right there, starting where? When it says Kru. Then you see Gur languages, Mosi, Masi. Then you see Senufo, Sibare, Momare, and Sukyari. That's Senufo. Then your Adamawa, your Bunjian group, Mamuyi, Njibake, Sango, and Zandi. Then you see your Kwe languages. And your Kwe languages, that's South Volta. Now the group we just did, that's your North Volta group. Your North Volta group is Kru, Gur, Senufo, Adamawa, your Bunjian group. Then you have your South Volta group. That's your Kwe languages, Akan, Iwi, Bali, Fon, Gadangri, and Anian. Then you have your West Benue Congo language, Yoruba, Edo, Igbo, Nupe, Adome. All those are your Benue Congo languages. Then you have your East Benue Congo language, starting with your Plateaus. Kangai group, Northwestern Plateau group, Central Plateau group, Southern Plateau group, Tarokoid, Jakunoid, Kororofe. Then you have your Bantu cross languages. Then your cross river. So you have your Abibo, then your Efik, that's your cross river. But all the cross river is East Benue. So then you have your Bantu cross languages. And that's what the cross river Abibo, then your Efik, then you have your Bantu languages. Bantu style, which are northern Bantu, Dacoid, Mambaloid, Tekeroid, and Jaguaroid. That was your Bantu languages. Then you have your southern Bantu. That's what the Jaguaroid, but it's the Tia. Tia. That's a southern Bantu language. Tia, T-I-B. Then you have your Ecoid. Then you have your Indian grass field language. Then you have, then that's southern Bantu, and then you have see BT, Fang, then Gale, Kikuyu, Kambe, Gusi, Miru, Sukume, Inyamwisi, Swahili, Gogo, Katube, Luande, Mbundu, Congo, Yaka, Ganda, Chiga, Inyakori, Soge, Heye, and Luyi, Nanda, Rwanda, Rundi, then have your Lube, Sangi, then have your Hayland, then you have your Tange, Inyakusi, Ngandi, Inyanje, Tombunke, Sine, then you have your Akue, Yo, Ngulu, Makandi, Mbundu, Hiriro, Shone, Inda, your North Soto, and Pida South Soto, Tiswane, then you have your South Ndebele, which is Loza, then you have your North Ndebele, then you have your Zulu, then you have your Zose, then you have your Swazi, then you have your Tisange, Tiswe, Bange, Chopa, Dinde, all those are your southern Bantu, but all those go fall upon the Volta Congo. So when you be on Wikipedia, you see Niger Congo language subgroups and numbers of speakers. Look at all these branches, and then you see the map. Where there are two maps above. It says Niger Congo languages. Then you see a map of Nigeria. So let's go to the map. Now, this is the map, languages of Africa. Now, a little possibly hard to see, but that's what this is. I'm showing this first. This is a map showing you the languages of Africa. Over here, it's the island of Madagascar. There's some Austronesian speakers on the island of Madagascar. Then your Khoi San speakers, Khoi San. Then over there near Kenya, Tanzania, It's a group, a chord saying does repeat constantly. Then up north, you see where it say Morocco, you see where it say Algeria and Libya, and then you see what's that? Mauritania. See up north, this is where your Berber Arabic speakers be. Then uh, then you see where you say all the Afro-Asiatics on the north, like the Berbers and then over here in Somalia, this way your Kushite, and then in Ethiopia, this way your Amharic, your Omitic, and some of your Tigrinya in Ethiopia and around Eritrea. And then you have your okay, we just did the Omitic, the Amharic, and the Tigrinya, and we did the Kushite. Now we're gonna show you the Chadic. And you know Chadic is an Afro-Asiatic language. That's where your Chadic. It's where they have the problems in Nigeria with the Boko Haram, the Chadic, the Hase. Then you have go back over here to Somalia, the other terrorist group, El Shabaab, over there in Somalia. And in northern Kenya, they've been having terrorist attacks in northern Kenya because some of the Somali people are living in Kenya. And then you have your Egyptian, which is Afro-Asiatic, and some of your Semitic, your other Hebrew, the Hebrew speakers over there in Israel, the Canaanites, Semitic subfamily, the Afro-Asiatic, then your Aramaics. Your Aramaics around Syria, uh, Lebanon, with the Iraq. That's where your Aramaics. And then you have your Arabic over there in Saudi Arabia, or Saudi Arabian Peninsula and North Africa, and some of the Middle East. So that's the Afro-Asiatic. Then the Nilo-Saharans. Now the Nubians is a Nilo-Saharan street. They're up in Egypt and in northern Sudan. Then you have your other Nilo-Saharan speakers. Okay, the Nilo-Saharan on this map got the like almost a purple color, but it's like a red. That's where your Nilo-Saharans, and then Niger Congo. Now they got two colors for the Niger Congo and the Bantu. Now the Niger Congo is the blue. Then the Bantu is in the green. The Bantu is the green. It's the Bantu. And that's on this map. Get the other map. It's another language of Africa. The colors. And see, in the north, that's where your Arabic and your Chadic, some of your Semitic speak, Arabic and Chadic. Those are your Semitic languages. Your Omotic and Amharic and Tigrinya, that's over in Ethiopia. Then your Cushitic, that's over in Somalia. Then you have your Egyptian, that's in Egypt. Then you have your Berbers, you see, Berber, Arabic, your Semitic speakers, like your Aramaics. Now it's not showing on this map, but your Aramaics around West Asia, with Iraq, Syria, and Jordan. That's where your Aramaics. And all that is Afro-Asiatic. And then you have your Nilo-Saharan. This is mostly purple looking color. That's where your Nilo-Saharan. And then you have your Khoisan family, Khoisan. That's in the brown. That's the brown. Khoisan. That's the Khoi and the San. That's your click consonants. And then your Austronesian on the island of Madagascar. That's your Austronesian. Then you have your Niger Congo. Niger Congo on this map is green. You see all the green? That's Niger Congo. All that's green is Niger Congo. You get this other map. Now on this map, you see up north where it says all your Afro-Asiatics, and the Afro-Asiatic, your Berber, your Cushitics, your Chadics, your Egyptians, your Hebrew, the Semitics, your Semitic, your Omotics, your Chadics. That's where they're located, mostly in the north. That's really why they got it in blue. Everything that you see blue is your Afro-Asiatic. You see the yellow? All the yellow is your Nilo-Saharan. That's the Nilo-Saharan, the yellow. And then you see now on this map you see a little, you see the Niger Congo. That's the Niger Congo on this map. It's the Niger Congo A. That's how they got it. That's the Niger Congo A. Then the Niger Congo B. See your Niger Congo B. All that Bantu land, that's Niger Congo B. Then you see the green, that's your Khoi and your San people, the click consonant. And then on the island of Madagascar, that's your Austronesian. That's your Austronesian on the island of Madagascar. Now this map here is a map more specific of the Afro-Asiatic, and it's showing you on this map the Semitic, the Cushitic, the Chadic, the Berber, and the Omatic, including the Tigrinya, because Tigrinya is a Semitic language. So it's showing you all the Semitics. And it's showing you all the Afro-Asiatic. Here's another map showing you the Afro-Asiatic. It's showing you the Semitic. It's showing you the Berbers. It's showing you the Chadic, the Cushitics. It's showing you your Omatics. This is an Afro-Asiatic map. Now, show you a map, a Nilo-Saharan map. Okay, this map here is a Nilo-Saharan map. It's showing you all the places where the Nilo-Saharan speakers are. This is the Nilo-Saharan. This is another Nilo-Saharan map. That's a Nilo-Saharan map. Now we're going to go to the Niger Congo A and B map. This is a Niger Congo language distribution map. Niger Congo had your Atlantics, your Wolo, that's the Wolof and the Fule, your Mandi, Bambare, Maliki, Manike, and Diule. Then you had your Crew, your Gur, which is more, your Quay, Bali, Akan, Iwi, Dogon, Ajord, and Amawe, Ubanji, Jibaye, Banda, and Zandi. Then your Cordofanians, then your non-Bantor, Yaruba and Igbo, then your Bantor, Thang, Tiki, and Gale, Mongo, and Kundu, Congo, Choki, Lube, Luganda, Rwanda, Bundi, Sukume, Kikuyu, then your Bantu, Swahili, Bakuwe, and Yanje, Biembe, Shone, Tisange, Northern Soto, Zulu, Southern Soto, Zolse, Tiswane, and Dange, Umbandu, Niger Congo. Everything that you see color, that's your Niger Congo. That's West Africa. Then your Bantu. That's the Bantu. It's all Niger Congo. It's another Niger Congo map. Okay. Oh, okay, let's go there. All right. This is another Niger Congo map. Now this is the map where we see the Niger Congo languages. Your primary branch, Volta Congo. Primary branch of the Niger Congo language. Primary branch, Volta Congo. South Volta. Bantu. Bantor, beside Bantu. Other East Binu Congo. West Binu Congo. And Quay. All those are your South Volta. Then your North Volta. Crew, Sinutho, your Gur, that's the Volta language, and your Adamawe, Ubandian, that's the North Volta. Then on this map it shows you your other primary branches, your Cordofan, your Mandi, and your Atlantic, and then it's another okay, let's go with that. Okay, this is Dogon, your other primary branch of Dogon. See, when I printed it off, get the end right there. We'll show you your other primary branch. When I printed it, it didn't come out. But that's the Dogon down at the very bottom. It's your other primary branches. Your other primary branches, your Cordofan, your Mandi, and your Atlantic, and Dogon. So On this map, it shows you Niger Congo languages. Your primary branch, Volta Congo, South Volta, Bantu. Then it says your Bantu besides Bantu. It's then it says your other East Beast, other East Benu Congo. Then you see the West Benu Congo. Then you see the Kwe language, Kwe. See all the South Volta. That's in West Africa. Then you have your North Volta, Kru. Then you see the Sanufo. Then you see the Gur Volta language. Then you see the Adamawa and Ubangi language. That's the North Volta. Niger Congo. Now we're going to look at a map of Nigeria. Now this is a map of Nigeria, and it shows you here on it shows you all your Niger Congo. It shows you your Nilo-Saharan, and it also shows you the Afro-Asiatic that are living in Nigeria. And you see up here in the northeast, Boko Haram, the terrorist group. That's where they be doing a lot of, and there's a lot of Nilo-Saharan. That's Kanuri. That's a Nilo-Saharan. And then when you be hearing about Boko Haram, when they talk about that Chibuk school, it's located. When they talk about bringing back our girls, when you look on the map and find Chibuk, where they kidnapped the girls, look where it's located. See, when I get through this, we're gonna find out about the Chibuk language. But up there in that area, there's Nilo-Saharan, the Kanuri. Boko Haram is Chadic. Boko Haram is a Hase. That's what they're gonna tell you. When you do research on the Boko Haram, they're gonna tell you that it's a Hase. And what's a Hase? That's a Chadic. And what's a Chadic? Afro-Asiatic. Afro-Asiatic. Now, this is another map of Nigeria. It's showing you the linguistic group. Now you see where it says Hase and Fulani. You know the Fulani are Niger Congo. The Hase, you know that the Hase, Afro-Asiatic. You see up here in the northeast, Kanuri, that's a Nilo-Saharan. That's where Chibuk schoolgirls were kidnapped. Then they just had a recent terrorist attack up there where it said Bago. right there close to the border of Chad, the African country of Chad, nation of Chad. It's Nilo-Saharan Kanuri. It's another map of Nigeria. We're gonna go online. We're talking about bring back our girl Chabut. That way we'll know what it's in Nigeria and it's in the northeast. It said that Chibok is a local government area of the Borno state of Nigeria, located in the south of the state. Now it said the town of Chibok is primarily a Christian village with a Muslim minority. Now this is what I want you to look at. It said most of the village speaks the Kabeku, K-I-B-A-K-U language. Now it said Kabeku is a local language spoken in Askire Ube. It said the language was said to have originated from the Chibok local government area formerly Damboa local government area of Borno State. Askire Ube has the following languages spoken: Kabeku, Chibok, Maga, Kilbe, Fulani, Hase, and other languages from ethnic minorities. Now, listen to this. It said that the Emir of Askire was a migrant from Nupe tribe in Niger State. Who are the Nupe? The Nupe, Niger Congo. It says here. Okay, so when we be hearing about that in Nigeria, you look up there in the northeast, where that map is. And you can probably see it a little better on this one. But this is what they talking about when you talking about Chibuk. When they talking about Borno State, in that area there is where Chibuk is in the northeast. So that's where they bring back that girl Chibuk in that location. Now, while we online, we done looked at the map, but we gonna do a quick review. Then we're gonna go to the slave ship, and we're gonna do a quick review on the East African and West African slave trade for a reason. Now, trying to adjust my seat. All right. Now, we're not gonna spend a whole lot of time, but we want to make sure we tie all this in. So when we talk about the East African slave trade, we're talking about tip to tip. We're talking about Zanzibar. We're talking about Zanj, Z-A-N-J. That's an Afro-Asiatic Arabic term to refer to the Bantu. So all those who are listening, whose ancestors were Bantu, your ancestors are Bantu from the East African slave trade, and your ancestors are Bantu, just like in we're talking about uh, in the Horn of Africa, where the Bantu women were house slaves for the Somali and for the Ethiopians. The Bantu women were sex slaves. You know, the women. I don't know what they did with the Bantu men. I guess they killed them, but they took the women, the Ethiopians and Somalians, had sex with them. And then you have over there in Saudi Arabia, the Arabs. They when they refer to the Bantu Zanj, they made slaves out of the Bantu. So Tip Tip was a slave trader in the East African slave trade, and on the island of Zanzibar, that was one of the ports when they transported the Bantu slaves to various parts of to Saudi Arabian Peninsula and to West Asia, Central Asia, South Asia, East and Far East Asia. The Bantu was sent away from East African coast in the in the Arab or East African slave trade. Now, then we go to the West African slave trade. And also, when we be talking about the East African slave trade, when you be on Wikipedia Bing, when you put it in, when you know when you go to the search, put slavery in Africa is what I put in. That way you can see typical tip because you had to put Arab slave trade or something else you wouldn't have seen what I wanted you to see, which was tip tip and the Zanj and Zanzibar. So now I'm putting in Atlantic slave trade. Right. So when you put in the Atlantic slave trade, you're gonna see what you want. It shows you about the Portuguese being down in the Kingdom of Congo, but it also talks about the Atlantic slave trade or transatlantic slave trade. It gives you a little more detail about the beginning of the slave trade. It tells you about the first Africans imported to the English colonies were classified as indentured servants. Like workers coming from England and also as apprentices for life. They were indentured servants. It says, now that's in that second paragraph. And then it says, now also that we see that's another reason why we're gonna go to the slave ship. They're gonna talk about the pirates. Now see that's some of this I didn't mention, but when we were talking about the first slave ship, see the first slave ship was a pirated. The pirates took the ship. It was the Dutch, and they took their ship. The pirates took the ship, and then they brought the ship to port. We're gonna get to that though. Say the Atlantic slave traders, ordered by trade abroad in the world, the Portuguese, the British, the French, the Spanish, the Dutch Empire, and the 13 colonies. Says here, now it talks about, you know, on Wikipedia, like I said, when you put in and insert the Atlantic slave trade, Atlantic slave trade. Now, when you scroll down where it says European colonization, slavery in West Africa, it's talking about the Canary Islands. It says in the second paragraph, using the Canary Islands as a naval base, European at the time primarily Portuguese traders began to move their activities down the western coast of Africa, performing raids in which slaves would be captured to be later sold in the Mediterranean. Now it says in the third paragraph, it says about 1494, the Portuguese king had entered agreements with the rulers of several West African states that would allow trade between their respective peoples, and enabling the Portuguese to tap into the well-developed commercial economy in Africa without engaging in hostilities. All right, we're finna scroll down. Okay. Okay, where it says 16th, 17th, 18th century, it's talking about the Atlantic slave trade customary divided into two eras known as the first and second Atlantic system. See, the first Atlantic system was the trade of enslaved Africans to primarily South American colonies of the Portuguese and Spanish empires. It says that while the Portuguese were directly involved in trading enslaved people, the Spanish Empire relied on the Asiento system, awarding merchants mostly from other countries the license to trade enslaved people to their colonies. It said during the first Atlantic system, most of these traders were Portuguese, giving them a near monopoly during the era. Some Dutch, English, and French traders also participated in the slave trade. It said the second Atlantic system was the trade of enslaved Africans by mostly English, Portuguese, French, and Dutch traders. The main destination of this phase were the Caribbean colonies and Brazil. This is another important key effort. Remember this. Following the British and United States bans on the African slave trade in 1808, we're going to get to that about the slave trade and these slave ships. It said in 1808, the ban, the United States banned it. But really, it was in 1807. That's another date, 1807, but it's saying on this Wikipedia, 1808, where the British and United States banned African slave trade. It says, in the same paragraph, 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, go down to where it says, European colonists initially practiced a system of both bonded labor and Indian slavery, enslaved many of the natives of the New World. For a variety of reasons, Africans replaced Native Americans as the main population of enslaved people in America. In some cases, such as the one in the Caribbean islands, diseases such as smallpox and warfare eliminated the natives completely. In other cases, such as South Carolina, Virginia, New England, colonists found they needed alliances with native tribes together with the availability of enslaved Africans at affordable prices. Beginning in the early 18th century, for these colonies, they banned Native American slavery. And a burial ground in Campeche, Mexico, suggests slaves had been brought there not long after Hernan Cortez completed the subjugation of Aztec and Mayan Mexico in the 16th century. Graveyard had been used for approximately 1550 to the late 17th century. We're going to get to Mexico. That's what I was talking about, the Gulf of Mexico, because there's a place in Mexico, Veracruz. Veracruz. They were bringing African slaves from the African continent to Mexico. Veracruz. Now, the triangular trade. Now, where it says, now where it's talking about the triangular trade, it's talking about the first sign of the trade was the export of goods from Europe to Africa. A number of African kings emerged and took part in the trade of enslaved people from 1440 to about 1833. Said for each captain, the African ruler would receive a variety of goods from Europe. These included guns, ammunition, and other factory-made goods. The second leg of the triangle exported enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas and the Caribbean islands. The third and final part of the triangle was the return of goods to Europe from the Americas. The goods were the product of slave labor plantations, including cotton, sugar, tobacco, molasses, and rum. Sir John Hawkins, considered the pioneer of the British slave trade, was the first to run the triangle trade, making a profit in every stop. Now it says here, the Atlantic slave trade was a result of, among other things, labor shortage, itself in turn created by the desire of European colonists to exploit New World land and resources for capital profit. Native peoples were at first utilized as slave labor by Europeans until a large number died from overwork and old world diseases. Alternative sources of labor, such as indentured servitude, failed to provide a sufficient workforce. Many crops could not be sold for profit or even grown in Europe. It said exporting crops and goods from the New World to Europe often proved to be more profitable than producing them on the European mainland. It says uh, West Africa, part of which became known as the Slave Coast, and later Central Africa became a source for enslaved people to meet the demand for labor. Now it says here, where it said European participation in the slave trade, it said where it says as of 1778, Thomas Kitchen estimated that Europeans were bringing an estimated 52,000 slaves to the Caribbean yearly, with the French bringing the most Africans to the French West Indies, 13,000 out of the yearly estimate. The Atlantic slave trade peaked in the last 2 decades of the 18th century during and following the Congo Civil War. Wars among tiny states along the Niger River's Igbo inhabited region and the accompanying banditry also spiked in this period. He said that another reason for surplus supply of enslaved people was major warfare conducted by expanding states such as the Kingdom of Dahomey, of Dahomey, the Kingdom of Dahomey, the Oyo Empire, and the Asante Empire. Now, when you see where it says slavery, Africa, and the New World contrast, it's going to tell you what we was talking about on the East African slave trade about the Somali and the Ethiopians and the Bantu. Listen to this. Slavery in Africa and the New World contrasted. It says here, forms of slavery varied both in Africa and the New World. In general, slavery in Africa was not heritable. That is, the children of slaves were free, while in the Americas, children of slave mothers were considered born into slavery. This was connected to another distinct. Slavery in West Africa was not reserved for racial or religious minority as it was in European countries, although the case was otherwise in places such as Somalia, where Bantus were taken as slaves for the ethnic Somalis. Now, we're talking about the slave market reasons and participation. There were 8 principal areas used by Europeans to buy and ship slaves to the Western Hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere is North America, which is Canada, the United States, and then you have Mexico, and then you have Central America, South America, and then you have the Caribbean islands. That's the Western Hemisphere. It says here slave market reason and participation. There were 8 principal areas used by Europeans to buy and ship slaves to the Western Hemisphere. Say between 1650 and 1900, 10.24 million enslaved Africans arrived in the Americas from the following regions in the following proportion. Senegambia, which is Senegal and the Gambia, 4.8%. Upper Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, and Sierra Leone, 4.1%. River Coast, Liberia and Cote d'Ivoire, 1.8%. The Gold Coast, Ghana and east of Cote d'Ivoire, 10.4%. Bight of Benin, Togo, Benin and Nigeria, west of the Niger Delta, 20.2%. Bight of Biafra, Nigeria, east of the Niger Delta, Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon, 14.6%. West Central Africa, Republic of the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Angola, 39.4%. Southeastern Africa, Mozambique and Madagascar, 4.7%. Now, where it says ethnic groups, it said the different ethnic groups brought to the America closely correspond to the regions of heaviest activity in the slave trade. Over 45 distinct ethnic groups were taken to the Americas during the trade. Of the 45, the 10 most prominent according to slave documentation of the era listed. The Congo of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Angola, that's number 1. Number 2, the Mandi of Upper Guinea. Number 3, the GB speakers of Togo, Ghana, and Benin. Adja, Mina, Iwi, and Fon. Number 4, the Akan of Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Number 5, the Wolof of Senegal and the Gambia. Number 6, the Igbo of southeastern Nigeria. Number 7, the Mbundu of Angola, include both Mbundu and Ovimbundu. Number 8, the Yoruba of southwestern Nigeria. Number 9, the Chambe of Cameroon. Number 10, the Makawe of Mozambique. Now, okay, where it says, okay, where it said European competition. It said the trade of enslaved Africans in the Atlantic has its origin in the exploration of Portuguese mariners down the coast of West Africa in the 15th century. Before that, contact with African slave market was made to ransom Portuguese who had been captured by the intense North African Barbary pirate attacks on Portuguese ships and coastal villages, frequently leaving them depopulated. The first Europeans to use enslaved Africans in the New World were the Spaniards, who sought auxiliaries for their conquest expedition labors on islands such as Cuba and Hispaniola. It said the alarming decline in the native population has spurred the first royal laws protecting them, laws of Burgos, 1512 and 13. The first enslaved Africans arrived in Hispaniola in 1501. After Portugal had succeeded in establishing sugar plantations in northern Brazil, Portuguese merchants on the West African coast began to supply enslaved Africans to the sugar planters. While at first these planters had relied almost exclusively on the native Tupani for slave labor, after 1570 they began importing Africans, and a series of epidemics had decimated the already destabilized Tupani communities. It said by 1630 Africans had replaced the Tupani as the largest contingent of labor on Brazilian sugar plantations. So all the people that's in South America and Brazil, when they trace the trade routes, slave trade routes, they know the ethnic group that's mostly populated in Brazil is the Bantu. When you look at where the Portuguese brought the slaves from to Brazil, to the sugar plantation in Brazil, then you know that the people that are, the Africans that are living in Brazil, they know they are Bantu. When you see where it's talking about the pirates, say New World destinations. Say the first slaves to arrive as part of a labor force in the New World reached the island of Hispaniola, now Haiti, and the Dominican Republic in 1502. It said Cuba received its first 4 slaves in 1513. In Jamaica, where the Rastafarians are at, talking about some Afro-Asiatic Rastafari, Jamaica received its first shipment of 4,000 slaves. I don't know where them 4,000 slaves came from. They didn't come from Ethiopia. They were not speaking Amharic. They were speaking Bantu. 4,000 slaves in 1518, Jamaica, Cuba, all over Africans that are in Cuba. Where did they come from? They came from Angola. That's where they came from. Where did the Africans in Haiti and the Dominican Republic come from? They came from Angola. That's where they came. They came from the west coast of Africa. They didn't come from the east coast. They didn't come from Ethiopia. They didn't come from Somalia. They didn't come from the Great Lakes area. They didn't come from Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. They came from the west coast of Africa to Haiti and the Dominican Republic. That's the reason why it's important about the slave ships. When you know where these slave ships came from, that's how you know who the people are that's living in the Caribbean. They're not Afro-Asiatic. So the people that's in Jamaica, talking about some Rastafari, that's Amharic. And Amharic is Afro-Asiatic. And the Afro-Asiatic and Amharic, that's Semitic. Your ancestors were not no Semite. Your ancestors, Bantu, Niger Congo. The first enslaved Africans to reach. Then it also says slave exports to Honduras and Guatemala. That's in Central America. They had African slaves sent to Honduras and Guatemala in 1526. They didn't come from the east coast of Africa. They came from the west coast of Africa. It says here the first enslaved African to reach what would become the United States arrived in January 1526 as part of a Spanish attempt to colonize South Carolina near Jamestown. It said by November the 300 Spanish colonies were reduced to 100 and their slaves from 100 to 70. The enslaved people revolted and joined the nearby Native American tribe, while the Spanish abandoned the colony altogether. Colombia received its first enslaved people in 1533. Colombia, that's in South America, right there next door to Brazil. Where did they come from? So the people that's living in Colombia, the Africans that are living in Colombia, they received its first enslaved people from Africa, from the west coast of Africa, Bantu, in 1533. Then could be West Africa, Mandi, Wolof, Atlantic, could be Dogon, but mostly Mandi and Atlantic. And who's your Atlantic? Your Wolof and your Fulani. Who are your Mandi? That's your Mandinka. I had to go back to the map, but you know who the Mandi are. So the people the Africans that living in Colombia, they know that the Africans didn't come from Ethiopia. They didn't come from Somalia. They didn't come from the Great Lakes area over there in Kenya, Uganda, or Tanzania, because all those Bantus were sent to the South Arabian Peninsula. They were sent to West Asia, Central Asia. They were sent to South Asia. What's in South Asia? India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, places like that. Iraq, Syria, that's in West Asia. Israel, uh, what's that? Lebanon, that's in West Asia. Jordan. So that's really why it's so important to know the West African and East African slave trade. We need to know that on the East African slave trade, the majority of us were Bantu. With the West African slave trade, you have two regions. You have the West African region and you have the Bantu region. So the people that's the Africans who were sent to Hispaniola, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, there's only two groups. There were Niger Congo, they're either West African or Bantu. In 1500, the Cubans, when the Africans were sent from the west coast of Africa, they were either West African or Bantu. And we know they were Bantu. And down in Jamaica, in the Caribbean islands, all those Caribbean islands, including Jamaica, the Puerto Rican islands, uh, all the islands in the Caribbean, all the islands in the Caribbean, all the Gulf Coast of Mexico, the Gulf of Mexico, all that that's in the Gulf of Mexico. When you talk about Honduras and Guatemala, that's Central America. In 1526, where did those slaves come from? Where did those African slaves come from? It's only either they came from the west coast of Africa or from Bantu land. So all those Africans that were sent from west coast of Africa, either they were West Africans or they were Bantu. So the African slave came to Colombia, received his first enslaved people in 1533. Then you go back over to Central America, El Salvador, Costa Rica, and the state of the United States of America, Florida, began their stints in the slave trade in 1541, 1563, and 1581. See, that's what we were talking about, the Gulf of Mexico. See, when you look at the map of the United States of America, you see the state of Florida, the Gulf of Mexico, the state of Florida on the Atlantic side, of the state of Florida on the Atlantic side. But then when you come about the Gulf of Mexico, the state of Florida, when you come around, see, when you, the state of Florida in the Gulf of Mexico, it said the 17th century saw an increase in shipments, with Africans arriving in the English colony of Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. Jamestown, Virginia received its first African slaves. Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. It said these first kidnapped Africans were classed as indentured servants and freed after 7 years. After 7 years, them Africans were set free. Now, it says here, it says some Irish immigrants took slaves to Montserrat in 1651, and in 1655, slaves were shipped to Belize. And then also, it said by 1800, said the Russian colonists noted that Boston U.S. based skippers were trading African slaves for otter pelts with the Tlingit people, T-L-I-N-G-I-T people in southeast Alaska. Now, this is what we were talking about. This is what I was telling you about the ban 1807 and 1808. It says, scroll down where it says end of the Atlantic slave trade. Then you read where it says, it's talking about end of Atlantic slave trade. It said, it says under the leadership of Thomas Jefferson, the new state of Virginia in 1778 became the first state and one of the first jurisdictions anywhere to stop the importation of slaves for sale. It made it a crime for traders to bring in slaves from out of state or from overseas for sale. Migrants from other states were allowed to bring their own slaves. Said the new law freed all slaves brought in illegally after its passage and imposed heavy fines on violators. It said Denmark, which had been active in the slave trade, was the first country to ban the trade through legislation in 1792, which took effect in 1803. Britain banned the slave trade in 1807, imposing stiff fines for any slave found aboard a British ship. Said the Royal Navy, which then controlled the world seas, moved to stop other nations from continuing the slave trade and declared that slavery was equal to piracy and was punishable by death. The United States Congress passed the Slave Trade Act of 1794, which prohibited the building or outfitting of ships in the U.S. for use in the slave trade. That was in 1794. In 1807, Congress outlawed the importation of slaves in 1807. Beginning on January 1st, 1808, the earliest date permitted by the United States Constitution for such a ban. See, 1807, Congress outlawed the importation of slaves, but in 1808, the earliest date permitted by the United States Constitution for such a ban. That's why 1807, 1808. So we're gonna hold this. We're gonna hold this. Open up another tab. We're gonna make a quick run. We're gonna look at Canada right quick. It says slavery in Canada includes both slavery as practiced by First Nations in land that now comprised Canada before European colonization, as well as slavery under European colonization, the latter which existed until 1833, when slavery was officially abolished. It says that some slaves were of African descent, but, but most were Aboriginal. It says slavery within Canada's current geography was practiced primarily by Aboriginal groups, while there was never any significant Canadian trade in African slaves. So let me say that again. While there was never any significant Canadian trade in African slaves, native nations frequently enslaved their rivals in a very modest number, were purchased by colonial administrators until 1833, when the slave trade was abolished across the British Empire. It says a small number of African slaves were forcibly brought as chattel by Europeans to New France, Acadia, and the later British North America during the 17th century. It said those in Canada came from the American colonies, as no shiploads of human chattel came to Canada directly from Africa. Let me read that again. It said those in Canada came from the American colonies, as no shiploads of human chattel came to Canada directly from Africa. It said because early Canada's role in the transatlantic slave trade was so minor, the history of slavery in Canada is often overshadowed by the more tumultuous slavery practices elsewhere in the Americas, most infamously in the North, in the American South, in the colonial Caribbean. Now, where it says under French rule in 1628, The first recorded slave encounter was brought by a British convoy to New France. It said, name given to the boy originally from Madagascar. Now it said by 1688, New France's population was 11,562 people, made up primarily of fur traders, missionaries, and farmers settled along the St. Lawrence Valley to help overcome its severe shortage of service and labor. King Louis XIV granted New France a petition to import black slaves from West Africa. While slavery was prohibited in France, it was permitted in its colonies as a means of providing the massive labor force needed to clear land, construct buildings, and in the Caribbean colonies work sugar plantations. It says that it says that now where it says under British rule, Canadian First Nation owned the trade in slaves, an institute that had existed for centuries or longer among certain groups. Now it said black slaves lived in the British regions of Canada in the 17th and 18th century. 104 were listed in a 1767 census of Nova Scotia, but their numbers were small until the United Empire Loyalists influx after 1783. As white loyalists fled the new American Republic, they took with them about 2,000 black slaves, 1,200 to the Maritimes, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Islands, 300 to Lower Canada, Quebec, and 500 to Upper Canada, Ontario. The Imperial Act of 1790 assured prospective immigrants that their slaves would remain their property. As under French rule, loyalist slaves were held in small numbers and were employed as domestic servants, farmhands, and skilled artisans. It says that by 1800, the other provinces of British North America had effectively limited slavery through court decision requiring stricter proof of ownership, which was rarely available. Slavery remained legal, however, until the British Parliament Slavery Abolition Act finally abolished slavery in all parts of the British Empire effective August 1, 1834. The Sierra Leone Company was established to relocate groups of formerly enslaved Africans, nearly 1,200 black Nova Scotians, most of whom had escaped enslavement in the United States. Given the coastal environment of Nova Scotia, many had died from the harsh winters there. They established a settlement in the existing colony in Sierra Leone, already established to home the poor blacks of London and Freetown in 1792. Said many of the black poor were African Americans who had been promised their freedom for joining the British Army during the American Revolution, but also included other African and Asian inhabitants of London. The Freetown settlement was joined particularly after 18th by other groups of free American Africans, became the first African American haven for formerly enslaved Africans. It said around the time of the emancipation, the Underground Railroad network was established in the United States, particularly Ohio, where slaves were crossed into the northern states over the Ohio River en route to various settlements and towns in Upper Canada, known as Canada West from 1841 to 1867. Now, this is Canada's only relationship to slavery generally known to the public or acknowledged by the Canadian government. So that's the Canadian. There was never no slave ship that came to Canada from from Africa. There was never no slave ship from Africa to transport slaves from Africa to Canada. The majority of the African Canadians came, the Underground Railroad, they came from the United States of America. They came from the American colonies. Now, we talking about the Gulf of Mexico, slavery in the Gulf of Mexico. Did a ship come from Africa to the Gulf of Mexico, like Texas, uh, uh, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, but also Mexico. We finna look up Veracruz. Now, we're talking about Afro-Mexican. It says here, it said Mexico. All right, let me read it. When you look stuff up online, I looked up, you know, Veracruz. But in different places, different things. But I'm gonna read this right. Afro-Mexicans, also known as Black Mexicans. They are an ethnic group made up of recent immigrants of African descent to Mexico and descendants of slaves, such as in the communities of the Costa Chica, of Oaxaca, Oaxaca, and Guerrero, and Veracruz, and in some cities in northern Mexico. The history of blacks in Mexico has been lesser known for a number of reasons. The relatively small number of regular intermarriage with other ethnic groups, and Mexico's tradition of defining itself as a mestizaje, or mixing culture. See, Mexico had an active slave trade since the early colonial period, and an estimated 200,000 Africans were brought there. From the beginning, the slaves, who were mostly male, intermarried with indigenous women. In some cases, Spanish colonists had unions with female slaves. Spanish colonists created an elaborate racial caste system classifying people by racial mixture. This system broke down in the very late colonial period. After independence. The legal notion of race was eliminated. Now, go down where it said origins. Like I said, when you look, I know all those listening, where it says Afro-Mexicans, where it says Afro-Mexicans, scroll down where it says origins. It says, although the vast majority had their roots in Africa, not all slaves made the trip directly to America. Some came from other Hispanic territories. Those from Africa belonged mainly to groups coming from Sudan and ethnic Bantu. Say the origin of the slaves is known through various documents such as transcripts of sales. Originally, the slaves came from Cape Verde and Guinea. Later, slaves were also taken from Angola and the Canary Islands. It says that from the African continent, dark-skinned slaves were taken. The first true blacks were extracted from Arguin, Arguin. Later in the 16th century, black slaves came from Brand, Beafadas, and Galafi in Cape Verde. Black slaves were classified into several types depending on their ethnic group and origin, but mostly from physical characteristics. There were two main groups. The first, called Retentos, also came Swati, came from Sudan and the Guinea coast. The second type were Amuletados or Amabrillados of lighter skin color when compared with other blacks were distinguishable by their yellow skin tone. It says here, although the majority of Mexicans do not have an African ancestry, a small percentage of Mexicans in Veracruz and Oaxaca, Oaxaca states have black ancestry. All right. And with but you see that was Wikipedia, but then it's it says. Okay, it says here, where it says history. Now, this is I'm still on Wikipedia, but I looked up Veracruz City. Veracruz City. Then scroll down where it says the history. Then around, let me see, one, two, the fourth paragraph, it says, as in other parts of Mexico, the indigenous people suffer from epidemics of European infectious disease and maltreatment, which decimated the population after contact. The Spanish began to import African slaves via the port of Veracruz to work on sugarcane plantations. In the 16th century, this slave had more slaves than any other in Mexico. Before the slave trade was abolished, Mexico had the second highest population of African slaves in the Americas, following Brazil. Let me read that again. It said, as in other parts of Mexico, the indigenous people suffer from epidemics of European infectious diseases and maltreatment, which decimated the population after contact. The Spanish began to import African slaves via the port of Veracruz to work on sugarcane plantations. In the 16th century, this state had more slaves than any other in Mexico. Before the slave trade was abolished, Mexico had the second highest population of African slaves in the Americas, following Brazil. So when you look on the map, look for the city of Veracruz in Mexico. And you did hear it when I was reading where it said Bantu. So all those people that are living in Mexico, they know their ancestors. It also says something about Sudan. But look on that, it says Bantu, where it says, what I looked up, heck, uh, Veracruz, Afro-Mexican. I looked up Afro-Mexicans, and it was on Wikipedia, and it was telling you about the history of Veracruz. So, and then it talked about the Bantu. Then I just got to reading on Wikipedia, Veracruz City. Now, I'm still on Wikipedia. We're still talking about slave ships coming to the Gulf of Mexico. Now we're finna look up Louisiana, because I looked up Texas, and there was no slave ship coming from Africa to the state of Texas. But don't take my word for it. Do your own research.
something else.
me see. Okay, here we go. All right, for all those listening, when we be talking about the Gulf of Mexico, I'm on Wikipedia, go to Louisiana, state of Louisiana, scroll down, where it's talking about expansion of slavery. It started, it said Banville brought the first two African slaves to Louisiana in 1708, transporting them from a French colony in the West Indies. He said in 1709, French financier Antoine Crozet obtained a monopoly of commerce in La Louisiana, which extended from the Gulf of Mexico to what is now Illinois. The concession allowed him to bring in a cargo of blacks from Africa every year. Let me read that again. That concession allowed him to bring in a cargo of blacks from Africa every year. So the state of Louisiana was one of those ports in the Gulf of Mexico where slaves were brought directly from the continent of Africa to the, to the United States, to the state of Louisiana. It says here, starting in 1719, traders began to import slaves in high numbers. Two French ships, remember they named these two French ships, the Dumaine and the Aurore, Aurore, arrived in New Orleans, carrying more than 500 blacks, slaves coming from Africa. Previous slaves in Louisiana had been transported from French colonies in the West Indies. By the end of 1721, New Orleans counted 1,256 inhabitants, of which about half were slaves. So there's one state, the state of Louisiana. They were importing slaves directly from the continent of Africa, the state of Louisiana. They were coming to New Orleans. I looked up the state of Mississippi. I didn't find any direct ships coming, but you do your own research. Now we're finna go to the state of Alabama. The state of Alabama. Now the state of Florida, you already know when we were talking about that slaves did come directly from Africa to the state of Florida on one side. Now, for all those listening, there was a slave ship. This author, he's wrote a book, but there is documentation about this slave ship, Clotilde, Clotilde, Clotilde. It's a slave ship, and it's referred to as the last slave ship to bring captives directly from Africa to the United States. And it's a schooner. The Clotilde was the last known U.S. slave ship to bring captives from Africa to the United States, arriving at Mobile Bay in autumn of 1859 with 10 to 160 slaves. The ship was a two-master schooner and was burned and scuttled. It was burned and scuttled at Mobile Bay soon after the schooners had arranged to buy slaves in Wadi Dahomey on May 15, 1859. It says here that many descendants of Cujo Cazole Lewis, the last survivor of the other Clotilde, still reside in Africa Town, a neighborhood of Mobile, Alabama. A memorial bust of him was placed in front of the Union Missionary Baptist Church there. Say history. Now scroll down where it said, in autumn of 1859, the schooner Clotilde, under the command of Captain William Foster, arrived in Mobile Bay, carrying a cargo of enslaved Africans numbered between 110 160 people. Captain Foster was working for Timothy Mayer, a wealthy Mobile shipyard owner and shipper who had built the Clotilde in 1856. It said local law relates that Mayer bet some northern gentlemen that he could get around the 1807 law, which prohibited the importation of slaves without getting caught. The Clotilde was a two-master schooner with a copper-sheeted hull. Mayer had learned that West African tribes were fighting and that the king of the Helmet was willing to trade Africans for $50 each in the kingdom of Wadi Dahomey. Foster arrived in Wadi on May 15, 1859, bought Africans from several different tribes, including members of the Tokbar tribe of Tamale Ghana, and headed back to Mobile. When the Clotilde arrived, federal authorities had been alerted to the illegal scheme. Fearful of criminal charges, Captain Foster arrived in the port at night and transferred his cargo to a riverboat, then burned the Clotilde before sinking it. The African slaves were distributed to those having a financial interest in the Clotilde venture, with Timothy Mayer retaining 30 of the Africans on his property near Mobile. Cujo, aka Cujo Lewis, was among the 30 held by Mayer. Mobile was in the deep south, and blacks, whether Africans or native-born people, were mostly enslaved. Copying the bottom rung of a racial hierarchy, the Africans brought on the Clotilde could not be legally enslaved. However, they were treated as chattel. The American Civil War ended 6 years after the illegal enslavement of the Africans brought aboard the Clotilde. Said when freed, the Africans settled at Magazine Point just north of Mobile, calling their community Africa Town. They adopted their own rules and leaders, and they established the African Church. The group worked hard. The women used their agricultural skills to raise and sell crops, and the men worked in mills for $1 a day. Saving money to purchase land when possible, they avoided the whites. Cujo Lewis, African name Cazole, was the last survivor of the Clotilde journey. In 1927, Zora Neale Hurston, the African-American writer, interviewed Lewis for the journal of Negro History and made a short film of him. During interviews, Lewis would tell about the civil wars in West Africa, in which members of the loser side were sold into slavery to Africans and Europeans. His group were Tokars of West Africa. Cujo related how he had been captured by warriors from neighboring the Helmet, taken into Wadi, and imprisoned within a slave compound. He had been sold by the king of the Helmet to William Foster, and then transported to the U.S. after the American Civil War. The Tokar people asked the U.S. government to be repatriated, but they were denied. Then they tried to recreate a homeland in Mobile. The group continued speaking their native language and used African gardening or cooking techniques, trying to retain their West African culture for several years. Cujo Lewis served as a spokesman for the Tokar people of Africa Town. He was visited by many prominent blacks, among them Booker T. Washington. Cujo Lewis eventually came to believe that Africans had to adopt a new country. Even though their white countrymen had treated them brutally, Cujo Lewis died in 1935 at the age of 94. In Africa Town, the Union Baptist Church has the Cujo Lewis Memorial statue in 1997. Descendants and friends mounted a campaign to have the community designated as a historical site. because Captain Foster burned and sank the ship upon arrival in Mobile Bay. Archaeological search continued for the wreck of the flotilla in the bay. I'm gonna stop right there. But it's the last flotilla. So all those listening, Alabama received the last ship uh, being captured from Africa to the United States. Mobile, Alabama, Africa town. Now, for all those listening, Galveston, Texas, in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, you see it's here. Now, although this where it said history of Galveston, Texas, scroll down where it said exploration and settlement. It says here the city of Galveston became important in the slave trade, establishing itself as the largest slave market west of New Orleans. It says here that Juneteenth, which is the oldest national celebrated commemoration of the end of slavery in the United States, owes its origin to the announcement of the Emancipation Proclamation upon the return of Union forces to Galveston in 1865. Galveston was the first city in Texas to provide a secondary school and public library for African Americans. But when it comes to the slave trade, Galveston, Galveston, Texas, was the largest slave market west of New Orleans. Galveston, Texas was the largest slave market west of New Orleans, Louisiana, and that's in the Gulf of Mexico. Let me see here. where it said history of slavery in Texas. That's another place you scroll down where it says slavery in colonial times. It says importation of enslaved Africans was not widespread in Spanish Texas. Now it said when the United States purchased Louisiana in 1803, Spain declared that any slave who crossed the Savannah River into Texas would be automatically freed. It said that scroll staying this where it says slavery in colonial time. It said the United States outlawed the importation of slaves in 1808, but domestic trade flourished, especially in New Orleans during the antebellum decades, in part due to the slave trade. New Orleans was the fourth largest city in the U.S. in 1841 and wealthy. Between 1816 and 1821, Louis Michel Aury and Jean Lafitte smuggled slaves into the United States through Galveston Island to encourage citizens to report unlawful activity. Most southern states allow anyone who informed on a slave trader to receive half of what the imported slave would earn at auction. The men sold slaves to James Bowie and others who brought the slave directly to a custom house and informed on themselves. The custom officers offered the slave for auction and Bowie would buy them back. Due to the state laws, he would receive half of the price he had paid. After that, he could legally transport the slave and sell them in New Orleans or areas further up the Mississippi River. It says, where it said Mexican Texas. It said by the 1800s, most slaves in Texas had been brought by slaveholders from the United States. A small number of slaves were imported illegally from the West Indies or Africa. In the 1830s, the British consul estimated that approximately 500 slaves had been illegally imported into Texas. By 1830, there were approximately 5,000 slaves in Texas. the state of Mississippi. For all those listening, when we talk about the Gulf of Mexico, Natchez, Mississippi, Natchez, Mississippi. It says here, Natchez, Mississippi. On Wikipedia, Natchez, Mississippi. Scroll down where it said the Forks of the Road Market. The Forks of the Road Market had the highest volume of slave sales in Natchez, and Natchez had the most active slave trading market in Mississippi. It says here, this also stimulated the market at the intersection of two streets, became especially important after the slave traders Isaac Franklin of Tennessee and John Armfield of Virginia purchased the land in 1823. Tens of thousands of slaves passed through the market, transported from Virginia and the upper South, many by walking over land and destined for the plantation in the deep South. In this forced migration, more than 1 million enslaved African Americans were taken from their family and moved southward. All trading at the market ceased by the summer 1870 when Union troops occupied Natchez. Now, that's one place. Like I said, we were looking up slavery in Mississippi. If you can look up Gulfport, Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi, the Mississippi Gulf Coast, that way, when you talk about direct shipment of slaves from Africa to the states on the Gulf of Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, them Gulf Coast, that way you know that we're not just talking about Jamestown, Virginia, but there was ships directly that went to the continent of Africa and took slaves from the continent of Africa and brought them to America, but not on the East Coast, not on the East Coast like Jamestown, Virginia, but in the Gulf of Mexico to Louisiana, like New Orleans, Louisiana, Galveston, Texas, Mobile, Alabama. You can look up like Natchez, Mississippi, right there with the Mississippi River. But then you talking about the Gulf Coast of Mexico. You're talking like Gulfport, Biloxi, Mississippi. Now we're gonna look up Florida. Now, for all those listening, the state of Florida, Pensacola, Florida, had said during the Spanish, when the Spanish first came to Florida, it said that they had imported African slaves directly from the African continent or from the West Indies or whatever. But Pensacola, Florida was one of those ports. Now I think it's another port called St. George's in Florida. But do your own research. And the point is this: when we talk about slavery, and when we talk about the West African slave trade, and we talking about uh, Africans being directly brought from West Africa and Bantu land to the United States of America. Jamestown, Virginia was the first, when the Spanish brought slaves directly from Africa to the United States of America. But don't leave out the Gulf Coast. Don't leave out Texas, the Gulf Coast. Don't leave out Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana. Don't leave out the state of Mississippi. Don't leave out the state of Alabama. Don't leave out the state of Florida. Because before 1807, and then after 1808, there were still pirates bringing slaves from the continent of Africa to the United States of America through the Gulf Coast, through the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm going to end this video. Again, my name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine. I live here in the city of Memphis, state of Tennessee, in the county of Shelby. And I want to thank all my fans, my support, for your continued encouragement and support. And I'm working on my entertainment, my music interest, and I will be going back to the studio to record. My attorney is working on this legal case with One Sound Studio and this person named Luga and his video company called Wicked Films about some money that they stole from me and back here in November and October of 2014. So until next time, I wish each and every one of you the best. Take care of yourself.